Howdy, everyone. My name's Nicholas, and welcome to the Headliner PodPod. We're a show about podcasts featuring podcasts by podcasters that's hosted by people who help podcasters with their podcasting. On each episode, a few of us folks over at Headliner sit down to play a game that centers around listening to randomly selected clips from over 500 episode submissions we've gotten from podcasters. Why? Well, in order to find what we call Pod Zero. Here are the rules. Each lucky contestant will hear a 60-second podcast clip. They'll then need to pick the correct podcast title out from a lineup of 3 choices before being shown the artwork for that show. Before we get things on the road, though, let's say hi to each of our contestants for today, starting with Max.
Hey.
Next up, we've got Jesse,
Hello, hello.
followed by Christy
Let's go.
and Oliver.
Hi, Nicholas.
Hey, Oliver. God, nobody else said hi to me. That was so great. Thank you for that. We also have Alyssa as our producer with an ad read.
Hi, everybody. Nicholas.
Thank you. I get a separate one. That's good. I like that.
Shout out to the host. Headliner just expanded our auto posting tool to include Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. With automatic audiograms, Headliner will create and upload podcast videos every time you publish a new episode. Grow your show on social media and YouTube in an easy and effective way with Headliner.
All right, cool. And with that out of the way, let's just get the show, started. Max, would you like to go first today?
Let's do it.
Neat.
Like, it's like a pain that I've never ever felt before at that kind of age. And I kind of there was a time when I'll go to school. It was hard to speak to people about how I was feeling. I was just channeling all these emotions inside. And there was times when I'd either get angry or get upset because I was just hurting about it so much. And then when I saw something to do like a charity walk, that's kind of where I channeled my energy. And so for me, charity's always kind of been I don't know, I wouldn't say an escape mechanism because that's wrong, but it's rather been somewhere where I could channel that extra energy. And then after that, when I went to university, I remember during my placement year, a group of us got together in my technology team and a few others from the business, and we did a run for the Great South Run, actually, for children with leukemia. And then over the years, I've been doing runs and walks, abseils, you name it, for different charities, just because I just wanted to give back.
All right, so there was our clip, and here are your choices, Max. Number 1, the Dyslexia Life Hacks Show. Number 2, Dyslexia and Us. And number 3, DB and P's Hacking Dyslexia.
Well, definitely seems like it was about dyslexia.
Yes.
What are DB and P's? Can I get a lifeline on that?
Does anyone want to take a stab in the dark, whatever the saying is? That sounds violent. Not a stab in the dark, a guess, a shot in the dark, still violent. Okay. Anyone?
If you have dyslexia, those are the most common, or some of the most common things that you get mixed up.
That makes sense, actually. They do look very similar.
Oh, I like that. I mean, a title that's kind of insider and educational. So let's go with that one.
Okay. DB and P's Hacking Dyslexia is incorrect. Sorry, Max. It actually was the Dyslexia Life Hacks Show. And this was... Yeah, I mean, it does, but I do like the DB and P's thing. I like that it's an in thing.
I guess the fact that Alyssa could recite that so quickly suggests that you must have looked it up or known it to write that title. So it should have been a hint.
Yeah.
Sure
yeah,
did.
That's actually a good point. So I guess the cheat there is if we actually can answer the lifeline stuff, don't go with that answer. But
that's it. That's the trick.
Your hack.
Anyway, this was from the episode Being a Neurodiversity Advocate with Bakuya Apong. And our show description is, this podcast gets to the stories behind the word dyslexia. From engineers to barristers, entrepreneurs to people who develop assistive technology, each episode takes a deep dive into each person's story to find out how they struggled and succeeded with dyslexia, strengths it brings, and the people who support dyslexics. So There you have it. Cool stuff all around. And I really like their podcast artwork. I know it's super simple, it's super straight and to the point and focused, but hear me out. Readability is important, especially when you have dyslexia. So I kind of dig it. So anyway, let's jump on over to our next contestant. Jesse, would you like to go?
Yes, I would, Nicholas.
Great. I feel like a teacher calling on a student who isn't looking just dead center at the screen. I kind of like it. It's a power trip.
Busted.
Ja.
Ich fand zum Beispiel auch total süß, dass du gesagt hast, so mit deinem Partner hattest du ja auch eine Situation, wo es die Frage war, hey, wenn du diese Sache machst, dann würde das Kapazität von mir brauchen, darauf entsprechend reagieren zu können. Die habe ich jetzt nicht. Können wir das bitte ein anderes Mal machen, wo ich dann auch entsprechend reden kann, wie ich das mir von mir wünsche. Das finde ich ja auch fair zu sagen, okay, du, ich möchte dir gerne die Aufmerksamkeit geben können und die Wertschätzung, wie es für mich wichtig ist, und ich weiß, dass ich die gerade nicht geben kann. Und das, also wie cool ist das, wenn wir das den Menschen sagen, so, hey, du liegst mir am Herzen und deshalb entscheide ich gerade diese und jene Sache nicht, oder dir zu kommunizieren, das kann ich jetzt gerade nicht leisten, und deshalb
und nicht, weil ich nicht will, sondern weil ich einfach gerade nicht gehe.
Genau, und das ich finde das so wichtig, eben dann nicht das passieren zu lassen, und dann kannst du nicht wertschätzend und aufmerksam reagieren.
Okay. There was your clip. I hope you were listening closely. Every time we get one of those clips that isn't in English, I always go, I should have taken that language in high school.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I should have taken that clip out.
Oh, no. I just should have taken it in high school. I don't think that forward, Max. Yeah. So
And I'm like, wow, that sucks. That really sucks. Sorry.
Anyway,
Well, lucky for you all, I
choice.
speak Portuguese, so let's get this.
Okay, word. So here you go. That wasn't Portuguese, though. That was German. And I transferred out of German my junior year because it was taught by the French teacher who hated me. So I don't know any of it either. So anyway, your choices are, number 1, ironically, let's talk about it. Number 2, do you feel it yet? And number 3, are you feeling it?
And I'm assuming that the title is in German, and these are the translations.
Yes.
You're going to have to, yeah.
All right. I feel like number 3 is a SpongeBob quote. And I feel like 2 is also very close to it and is most likely also a smoke screen. So I'm going to go with number 1. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So unfortunately, you fell for the smoke screen. It is, do you feel it yet? It's the second one. So sorry. So actually, it's not any of those. It's technically spurts du schon, but you know, I'm assuming that's what that translates out to. Anyway.
I
this
won't
was from
lie.
the-
I thought the SpongeBob reference was "Are you feeling it?" So
It is.
you were right, but okay.
Yeah, it is.
Never mind. Ignore me then.
As a person whose TikTok feed is like mostly SpongeBob clips for reasons that escape me, yeah, it is that. Anyway, the episode this was from is If You Are Empty, Your Connection Will Also Be Empty. 2024, episode 1. And our show description is feel emotions, accept them, and use them for yourself. I'm assuming that was in German at some point, but you never know. Anyway, cool stuff. And let's just jump over. Let's just, move over to our next contestant, shall we? Oliver, would you like to go next?
Hi, Nicholas.
Hey, Oliver.
Because something that I hadn't realised, and it wasn't until actually I went over with Morgan, when people say, did you go to America for 3 days? I went, yeah, I went to drop Morgan off. And they were like, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. So I was like, yeah, well,
Like he's just at his friend's house.
yeah, right, gone for a sleepover. And he said to me, oh yeah, we have to do like a cultural experience in the US at least once a month, and then upload it to the CEP program so that they can see that we're actually doing something other than just working. That's what qualifies as a cultural experience program. I was like, so what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know. But then in swoops Zach Brown and takes them to the most incredible experiences. So
You're really selling it like it's been this whirlwind tour. Do you want me to talk about that? I want to say thank you, first of all, for taking me into...
From a parental side of things, Claire.
Yeah.
All right. Here are your three choices. Number 1, oh, Mickey, you're so fine. Number 2, bibbity bobbity snacks. And 3, the Great British Mickey Waffle.
Bibbity bobbity snacks.
Hmm.
I'm taking that one out.
Okay.
And could I hear that last one again? The Mickey Waffle?
Yep, the Great British Mickey Waffle.
It's a British Bake Off reference, I'm assuming.
Well, I think it's a reference to the fact that Alyssa once had a job at Disney World and didn't think I would think of that when reading through the answers. So I'm going to take that one out, which leaves us to a reference to that song, Mickey, You're So Fine.
Unfortunately, it was incorrect. The correct one was the Great British Mickey Waffle.
No!
Yeah, these were all references, so that's hard.
I don't think it was
Next
Mickey Mouse,
level.
maybe. Mickey is some other British word, right?
Well, now
It
I
is
think it
another
is.
British
Mickey
word.
Mouse.
It is Mickey Mouse. Oh.
There we go.
Yeah.
Waffles.
I think the other word is like the drug.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
taking that
one
one
way,
out.
but
Okay.
you can also just say you're taking the Mickey out of someone, like you're making fun of them, you're
Mm.
teasing them.
Mickey
Like you're
So-
stopping them from doing drugs.
I don't know.
Just
What I'm getting
dark
from this is that
Disney.
what I'm getting is that British English is very confusing because taking the Mickey out of someone could mean taking drugs away or making fun of them.
Wow.
How dark and multi-layered.
or removing all of their Mickey Mouse fan club apparel and
That's
beating them
true.
senseless while reprogramming them not to like Disney. So
That's
there's
valid.
3 possible answers.
Taking
Also-
their Mickey Mouse ear cap off their head.
Reclaiming it. Can we also just address how like nuts it is that we have a Disney food related podcast like a week after somebody tried to sue Disney for like his wife dying at a Disney restaurant?
Yeah.
It's
That
like
happens
actually
every day, though. Like,
yeah, I know, but this was like literally front page news this week. I don't know if anyone here heard about that.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. So
Missed.
the TLDR is that Disney's trying to defend themselves by saying that he signed up for Disney Plus at one point and their TOS bars you from suing them.
Not even Disney Plus. They signed up for the free trial
Yep.
months ago. Never paid for it. Only the free trial.
So
So their
That's
TOS
fun.
has some clause. It's like, if you get food poisoning at a restaurant,
No, it like says that if you aren't allowed to sue Disney, only go to arbitration.
Yep.
If you've signed up for Disney Plus. But I think that ended up they took that out. I think the
Yeah.
PR from that defense alone was probably so damaging to them that they
Can only imagine.
it was pretty bad. And apparently it was over like 50 grand or something. So they were just like, nope, we're just going to take it out. Let's do it. Sorry.
yeah.
But anyway, back to this. This was from episode 122, New Beginnings, Ready for the Ride. And our show description is, welcome to the Great British Mickey Waffle. We are a positive band of British voices united in all things Disney. So there you go. I'm assuming it's just like Disney in general and it's not food related, but there you go.
maybe
I'm
this is a
also
thing
realized-
in Britain. They have Mickey waffles at the Disney lands or worlds there.
Maybe.
Also, shout out for the cover art. This is a nice cover.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like the whole Mickey waffle thing just because I never realized how easily you could turn Mickey Mouse's head into like a waffle shape. So, cool stuff.
That's
Anyway.
where the idea came to Walt. He was eating waffles and he had the idea for Mickey.
That's actually like a pretty interesting theory, Max. It had nothing to do with Oswald the Lucky Rabbit and losing the rights to him. Nothing.
Nope.
Yeah.
Just
Anyway.
waffles.
Christy, would you like to go next? Okay.
Yes, let's
You're-
go.
Neat. Let's do it.
Podcast family, it is your girl, Candidly Kristen, and I'm popping in because, as you can see, the Candy Shop podcast is taking its usual break for the summer. I need to spend some time with my family, my grandies, do some vacay stuff, some fun stuff. I'm always working. So this is my time to spend with the family and generally enjoy the fruits of my labor. The show's last episode for the before the mid-season break, went up on the 25th of June, and I will be posting best of episodes for your listening pleasure. And if you're tired of listening to the podcast, head over to Audible and check out some of the books that I've narrated. Smoke and Leather is an amazing good versus evil kind of thriller mystery.
Okay.
Okay.
So here are your options. Number 1, let's get real honest with Kristen. Number 2, the Candid Shop podcast. And number 3, honesty is the best podcasty.
I'm gonna not do honesty is the best podcasty. It's good, but I don't feel like that's theirs. I'm gonna go with number 2.
Okay. Is there a reason? Was it because they said it during the show?
No, I don't. I'm just gonna go with 2.
Okay, yeah, you're just gonna plead the 5th. That's fine. It is correct. That was the Candid Shop podcast. Welcome back to the show. And yeah, this was from the episode It's Summer Break Time. And our show description is welcome to the Candid Shop podcast, an honest, open space where real people keep it candid about a variety of relevant issues, topics, from relationships to parenting to starting a business, and everything in between. Join me, Candidly Kristen, for candid, that's with a K, conversations about all things real and relevant. So there you have it. Good on you. And
I did it. I'm very happy.
You did it. You did it all by yourself with zero help from the show.
We're back to winning here.
Yeah, exactly. So we do have one more clip left. If everyone would like to cover their eyes and band together.
We are not judge and jury to how someone do their own spiritual practice. So let's just honor and respect each other on where we are along our spiritual journey, because you never might know what battles someone is going through, and they might be new to spiritual awakening. So we don't want to project any fear into a person while they're still learning themselves. That's why I live by Maya Angelou, that states, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you can do better. We are all trying to figure this thing called life out. So we just gotta, respect each other and allow each other to grow in their own time and in their own space. Because like I said, everybody's journey is different.
Okay. There's your clip, and here are your choices. Number 1, connecting the dots. Number 2, stars and science. And number 3, it's all connected, hosted by Phoenix.
Spell check on the name Phoenix.
It's funny you said that, actually, Oliver, because I can't answer it realistically. On the show title, it's spelled Pheonix, but on the artwork, it is spelled Phoenix.
Okay.
So then it's that one, because the other 2 didn't mention the words Phoenix, right?
Well, nah. So you think about that for a minute.
Got him.
So it's that one. Let's do
to rights.
Nicholas.
Yeah, that's on me. How is that on me, Alyssa? You should have put Phoenix on the other ones.
I just copy paste from what's in the show notes. All right.
Okay.
Ladies and
that's what
gentlemen,
I'm talking about. We got him. Everyone, we got him.
On a technicality, let's go.
Yeah, okay. I'm giving that to Christy too, because he did just get the other one from the show.
You would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for us meddling kids.
Yeah, and your talking dog. Anyone have a dog they can just lift up to the camera really quick?
Hold on.
I have 2.
Coda.
They're asleep on the couch.
Amazing.
My dogs are outside.
Jesse, I don't know how to break it to you, but that isn't a dog.
Crap.
You got swindled.
I gotta return it.
Yeah. Anyway, this was from the episode Spirituality Your Way. And our description is, It's All Connected Podcast. It's a show to help you on your spiritual journey. During this time of great awakening, we can all agree that we're starting to question everything. I created It's All Connected Podcast as a safe space where you learn how to connect the dots between spirituality, religion, and science. Join me along this spiritual journey and uncover some of life's mysteries that are hidden in plain sight. House of Alignment is for those seeking discovery and a connection to their higher selves to live a purpose-filled life. Look within so you can never be without. So, there you go. There you have it. Darn it, I've become a Scooby-Doo villain. I'm going to be shoved into the mystery machine or whatever, or just arrested. I don't remember how those episodes ever ended. Krista, you're on mute, but it seems like you have lore for us.
I'm trying. I don't remember to unmute myself ever. They always end with them just being tied up. I believe there's never police.
Right. They just leave him there.
Yeah.
No, they deal
got
with them.
you. Oh.
This is too, it wasn't appropriate to show what happens next. But
yeah,
it was
that
implied.
Hanna-Barbera policy.
Yes.
The 3 rules of Hanna-Barbera. Never show the people getting arrested, reuse animation, and make like 20 Flintstones spin-offs. So, there you go.
That's how the sausage gets made.
Yeah.
We have a similar set of rules at Headliner.
Yeah.
Really? Wait,
No
are we launching a Flintstone spin-off?
Oh, many.
Oh, cool. Anyway, thanks for playing, everybody. Thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll catch you on the next PodPod. So yeah, bye.